Welcome everyone and have a nice day. My name is Julia and I'm your moderator in today's webinar, Revolutionizing Regulatory Publishing, eCTD v4 meets structured content and generative AI. With me are my two speakers. Please welcome with me Anjana Pindoria-Rettenberger, Director of Product Strategy, and Kenneth Gutierrez, Director of Product. Anjana and Kenneth, I hope you are with me. Hello, good to see you, Anjana. Hello, Kenneth.
Hello.
I hope you're fine. Hello. Looking forward to hearing and seeing from you guys. We have participants joining already. That's good. And before I come back to you, let me tell them a bit about our webinar. So, this is a webinar by Cormio, and this is because Docuvera and EXTEDO are actually Cormio brands, as you can already see as you might have seen in the logos. Cormio is a Bertelsmann company. It has been founded by Bertelsmann Investments and consists of several brands, the Cormio brands Docuvera, EXTEDO, Rote Liste, and Medsense IE. Together, they form a smart information lifecycle for life sciences. The lifecycle starts at Docuvera with AI and structured content authoring. It passes EXTEDO with regulatory quality and safety information management, and then moves on to Rote and Medsense IE for medicines information distribution. And of course, as it is, it doesn't end, but move forward. A few words about EXTEDO. EXTEDO is a leading provider of life science information management software and services for industry and health authorities worldwide. Our solutions and services cover the whole regulatory life cycle from one end to the other. We offer our customers effortless compliance and serve them with industry and agency-ready solutions and services. Our systems are future-proof, so you can always be sure that you are up to date with formats and national and international requirements. So now I'm passing over to Kenneth, who will tell us a bit about Docuvera. Thank you.
Thank you. So Docuvera is a governance-first structured component authoring platform for the entire life cycle of creating and updating content for life sciences. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Julia. The Docuvera solution has multiple pieces that really distinguish it and set it aside. We have a scalable structured authoring platform. It was built with life sciences heavy regulation first and foremost, governance at every layer, metadata rich at every layer, and the content is aligned with those global frameworks from the EMA, FDA, and other health authorities, as well as other use cases, clinical, pharmacovigilance, medical affairs. We're building out a first-class and structured component authoring with governance first AI co-writer tool. It has safeguards built in and leverages the structure and machine readability of structured component authoring to keep humans in the loop, make sure that the AI is being only deployed where wanted, and keep those compliance with 21 CFR Part 11, Annex 11 compliance. Because we are authoring on the structured level, we have a broad capability in doing digital outputs. We can do compliant exports for eCTD, which we're going to showcase today, but we also are capable of transforming content easily into FHIR-based EPI type 1, 2, 3, as well as ICH M11 protocols, Transcelerate protocols, and your more classic exports such as Word, PDF, and various other XML formats. Docuvera as a platform is built and infrastructured to be able to connect with other systems. So today we'll showcase connecting with EXTEDO and how we can collaborate and work across that, but we also can connect with other RIMs, translation services, LIM systems, safety, artwork systems, and many other things that are in the software ecosphere that you're working on. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Julia. Today we're going to show and really prove the idea that Docuvera replaces these fragmented document-centric systems with structured, governed, and reusable content. Most of the content in life sciences can be created once, approved once, and reused in a plethora of areas. Because of how we build individual components with the key information, it is interoperable by design. We can take something that is written for a clinical protocol and utilize it in a labeling update. We can take CMC information and pull it into that instructions for use healthcare provided information. All of those can be turned into eCTD 4.0, IDMP exports, FHIR, ICH M11, whatever is pertinent to the type of content that you're working with. Because we are working within a system and it is all componentized, we really do have governance at creation. There's no content that is authored or pulled into Docuvera that doesn't have compliance built into it. Finally, with AI, the structured content, the machine readability allows for AI to engage with the information on a much deeper intellectual level, but also a safer compliance methodology for automations, transformations, and leveraging AI to do that critical thinking for you. We'll showcase each of these in the later demonstration, but for now, I'll pass it over to, I believe, Julia, and then to talk through our overall process. You are muted, Anjana.
I will take that one over, so I will share my screen. Sorry about that. So I'm glad that you mentioned compliance, and I'm glad that you mentioned how eCTD4 structured content is coming together. I guess from EXTEDO point of view, we are in a really unique position because we are not only the trusted providers for the life science, but actually we're the trusted providers for the regulators on a global level as well. So there's a really great bridge between the two stakeholders coming together. And if we look at eCTD4 from a business aspect and the business processing, there is a natural evolution taking place. So for those of you who might be younger than me, you might not be aware, but it used to be a very kind of manual, paper-driven way of working. And then we've evolved naturally into documents and into PDF and Word. But if we kind of look at where we are today and how eCTD4 is going to help, it almost revolutionizes the process, but also whereas we are the bridge between life science and regulators, eCTD4 is that stepping stone into using structured data and leveraging that information. So from a really process point of view, if we look at eCTD4, yes, there is still a structure behind it, but the building blocks of that structure is based on metadata, controlled vocabularies, identifiers. Where we kind of see this going, and this is what we will present to you today, is how structured content can still form part of the eCTD4 compilation, but also it's providing context to the end users who are looking at it. So if we kind of go through onto the regulator side, still in my lifetime, there's still humans that need to process the information, although machines are still working really hard on their side. So the content that we provide from the applicant point of view still has to be contextualized, that assessors can look at it and perform a scientific assessment. So what we will show today is Kenneth starting off from the Docuvera and putting together a specific labeling document. And then I will take over to show you how that final compilation looks like. Before we do that, I just want to focus on this little area over here. It's small, but it's mighty. This is known as the eCTD4 structure. Don't worry, I won't go into so much detail that I would lose you, but there are some components that I think are quite important to understand. Number one, there is this high level, which is called the first level folder. And this is where the medicine plus the multiple strengths that are going to be assessed and the dosage form are going to sit. So within this folder is going to sit the actual eCTD structure. What is mandatory in eCTD4, and it hasn't been for current standards, is the introduction of this submission level. So it can be interchangeable. Many call it submission, some call it regulatory activity, but there is a container for all of the changes that need to be processed by applicant and the regulator. So in this case, we're performing an initial marketing authorization. Depending on where your expertise is, there is a new numbering that's taking place in eCTD4. This is known as the submission unit, but you are probably more familiar to call it the sequence number. So it's a single digit number. It's the first time that the regulator would receive this application in the eCTD4 structure, and this is the information that comes in. And then it's followed by the controlled vocabularies plus keywords that's building up the body of the structure. And many might say structures are unimportant in a world where technology is really advancing, but I guess we are still of the opinion that structure is important because it houses the data into a contextualized view that can be assessed by humans. All in all, I would say eCTD4 is really helpful because it's using data to make decisions. And I truly see this, as well as everyone within the organization, the possibility to elevate submissions to a different level and provide value throughout the network. So just a brief overview of what the structure looks like. And then I hand over to Kenneth to go through the demo of Docuvera.
Just getting everything back live. All right. Let's see, and share. There we go. So welcome to Docuvera. When you log in, you end up on our library page. The library page contains projects. Projects can represent repository information, such as a company core data sheet or full documents, and also subparts of documents. All of the projects are driven based on a project type, which is a templatized structure of the headings, the usage, the metadata, and the ultimate destination and life cycle that content should go through. I'm going to draw attention up to tracking. So today we are walking through a use case where we have an update to some information, and that update is routed to us through a change order. We also track deviations, and we're able to see those kind of on the global scale. I have this shortened just to the recent, but I am able to expand this to show all 51 change orders that came before for that overall tracking of content changes. For each change order, and in this case, we do have an update to the renal impairment for our pharmaceutical product. And we have some information, change description. These can be tied into those larger change orders, call to actions, or noticeable updates. And each change order in Docuvera leans into our componentized structure, starting with the project. So I can see that this change order is impacting our company core data sheet, as well as our Annex 1 summary of product. These are related because the information in the Annex 1 does originate from the core company data sheet. Docuvera's reuse relationship helps manage that complexity of making sure changes will percolate down throughout all the affiliate downstream information flow, starting at your source documentation, in this case a CDS, but it could have easily been a safety study or many other sources. I can see that on the project status, this change order is marked as complete in the core data sheets. And just drilling in, I can actually see the very specific component, the individual content that was changed and updated based on this change order. So I can see that and preview that. The Annex 1, however, is in progress. So when I look at that, it has different content. And my call to action today is actually to satisfy this change order 52 because Anjana needs documentation for her eCTD4 assembly. I can just go ahead and quickly navigate right to the project that I would like to work on. And now I am seeing a very word-like representation of structured authoring on the component level. It's important to note that with that governance, we have governance on the level of the whole project. So in this case, it's currently approved. And before I can do anything, I need to unlock it and create a new version. Prepare for submission. Just get that started. As this happens, versioning control on the project level will indicate that this is a new draft and enable me to start interacting with the content. What's interesting is each piece, each component within the project also has its own approval. And in order to engage with any specific parts, I would have to up version and every interaction would be tracked by Docuvera. It's also important to note that some components actually come from other sources. So in this case, we have some verbatim usage, meaning this content was taken without modification and in its entirety from a source project. And below, I have an example of a derivative, which means it has a source, but some change was made on the local level or on the annex level. In this case, a formatting distinguishment so that we have that indent. As we look through things and are engaging with the content, we do have some AI tools. So we are building out a collection of items in our co-writer that I'd like to showcase just real quickly. So our co-writer AI is built and integrated into the system. It is not leveraging anything outside of Docuvera for its answers, analysis, or transformations. And it is also very dependent on the structured components that you engage with. So we can engage with and transform. For example, if I wanted to see a lay summary of this text, maybe it's not making too much sense to me and I'd like to disambiguify it, we can pull that up and we can see that the original text in full scientific language has been transformed into a lay summary. If this was the current call to action, I would be able to insert that content or utilize that content. But right now, I'm just using it to showcase. We're also able to do translations, tables to text, and many other cool things in co-writer. Co-writer is also extremely helpful if we were creating the first draft. But today, our call to action was actually on that change order. We saw the change orders on the library level where it indicated everything going on. We also have change orders available directly in the project. Again, I can see that detail as to what that call to action is, and I can see that it has an impacted component. Easy as clicking to navigate, and we can see that this component is the subject matter, and we need to update it to reflect the new information on renal impairment. It was reused verbatim from the CDS, but I also noticed that there's a black dot and it tells me that updates are available. So I can actually open that up in what we call side-by-side mode and quickly use the tool to navigate and see that this content has an update. Specifically, it has new text at the end appended in green. I can, as easy as drag and drop, bring over that new content to say, I accept that change from the core company data sheets. My black dot is removed. It now shows that it's using from version 6 of the core company data sheets. And with that, I'm actually able to say this change order on this component is complete. And as that was the only impact, I can go back and review the detail. We did update with the newest revision for renal impairment. And my current project status, I can actually flag as complete. With that, Docuvera can go into a host of workflow defined for purpose based on the template that we're utilizing. Just quickly, I will show a review just because it's required in order to go forward to that approval for any internal review. For the demonstration purposes, I am going to review it myself. So just asking to review the application of change order 52. All right. So the draft project is now locked down, and in order to engage with it, we do have to go into that review cycle. Here, I'm again able to see the project, navigate through. That information though, why was I called to do this review? Was to review the application of change order 52. Again, we can view and see that change order, use it to quickly navigate around the project and see the subject matter of what's going on. And I also, as a reviewer, have access to see what all is going on. Maybe I don't like the formatting of this parent phrase. Unfortunately, in a commenting only review, this user does not have access to actually adjust what's going on. We can, however, highlight, leave a comment for consideration on that content and say, that this could be done as a separate sentence and added for clarity. I can further identify that this is not necessarily a data tweak, but merely an editorial comment. I can add that commentary in, and that is there. With that, my review is done. So I can end it, and it will go back to the author of record, the project owner, and they will now have access to see those reviews and act upon them before proceeding in that cycle. Switching roles back, I'm now the primary author responsible for this piece of content, and I can see that a reviewer did make a comment. And I can again open up and quickly navigate to that area. I can see that it had comment on selected content. We do separate out the selected content from the live because if I were to go in and make modifications, this will forever keep the scope of that comment review and what I was talking about. Unfortunately, for this editorial comment, I am going to actually reject it and say this was approved for use in the CDS. Stylistic changes not needed in this level. And I can record my reason and rationale for how I respond to each comment. With all of my comments cleared and my update according to the change order complete, we can now review the whole document, in this case, the Annex 1, which is a subpart of that eCTD 4, and send it off for approval for submission. Again, for the demo purposes, I'm going to be self-approving, but normally this would be a role-based access control, and only specific people would be able to do this for each collection of content. Ready for assembly into the updated eCTD4 for submission. When that is sent off to your approvers will get an email notification as well as tasks and other things to indicate and bring them to this activity. One of those is an assignment, and I can see that assigned to me is an approval. I could come to this from the library page, from the tasks, or from that email, and be able to, again, go in for that approval activity. What we are seeing is going to be a web preview of the content. Docuvera and its templates utilize a collection of style sheets for ultimate format and form of the content, and we can download in various forms to preview in that way. But in this case, I'm just reviewing and making sure that any changes made on this do end up being something that I approve. All right. With that, I am going to say that this is approved and say it's ready for assembly into the updated eCTD4 for submission. As that's kicked off, it is available and approved with a new version in the library. And I am able to now send it over for the EXTEDO export. The EXTEDO export is taking it, applying that style sheet of record, and formatting that ultimate document that Anjana should be receiving any second now to be able to utilize going forward.
You know what it is, Kenneth? Every time I see you do this, or if I see someone else do it, I'm still so mesmerized because I have to pinch myself that this is becoming a reality. So thank you so much. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the eSub Manager publishing system, where we are publishing eCTD4 for the US FDA, EMA for the centralized procedure, and upcoming Japan as well. So I'm going to take it over, but I'm going to kind of start it from a slightly different context just to give an overview of the user interface. So one thing I mentioned was with eCTD4, it's really a stepping stone into leveraging structured data, be it on an international level using the ICH controlled vocabulary, or even the ISO IDMP standards, which in EMA's case is called SPOR. It's really leveraging that data. So one of the differences between our current standards and eCTD4.0 is that there is a lot of data being processed. So I am in the eSub Manager. There's two elements of the eSub Manager. The first element is the publishing, where the publishing teams are going to come in and they're going to add the data. The second element, which I will also discuss, is the viewer. The viewer actually for eCTD4 is mandatory. It's not easy to be able to see this export in a file share. A viewer is going to be mandatory. So I'll look at the first part and then we'll go to the second part. So as I mentioned on the slides, we have our high-level application level or application layer. Within that, we have the regulatory activity, which is called the submission, and then we have the submission unit. I'm not going to enter these details because this is already coming over, but we have data on the different levels. So we have it on the highest level, which is application. We have information also about the regulatory activity itself. So in this case, it's a marketing authorization, and it's the first ever submission unit that is going to be submitted. And it's an EMA application, so it's heading over to EMA. We also have metadata coming in at this submission unit level, so that the more sequence level as people might be used to. So I would say that's kind of self-explanatory. There's data at all levels. With our EXTEDO Pulse, with our eSub Manager, we can leverage controlled vocabularies, data from other MDM systems, in this case, also from Docuvera. If it's got structured data, we can take it over on these different levels. A new granularity that's coming in, and this is called sender-defined keywords. This is basically the keywords that are used in combination with the CTD sections to build out that hierarchy. So all of this information is something that is expected to be added also by the life science organization. So again, leveraging IDMP, leveraging ICH, all of that metadata is something that can be absorbed into the eCTD4 structure. I now move towards the submission unit. And the submission unit is the body of where all of the data is being captured. So here you see I've already got the documents and the document that Kenneth brought in. So if I just, let me just make it a little bit cleaner so you can see it. This is the document that has come in from Kenneth. Now what we see here is 3 layers. The first is the view of all of the documents. We also see what submission unit that is a part of. And then here, if I just kind of go on this drop-down menu, it is all of the sections that a document can belong to. Now in eCTD4, it's actually not allowed for a document to exist without this section, or what it's called context of use in the 4.0 language. So there has to be a one-to-one relationship between the two. So I can't, if I left this blank, then I would get an invalid on the submission. I couldn't export it and submit it to the regulator. And you also then have these so-called keywords as well over here. So that also has to be entered in. If I want, I can open up the document. So this is kind of still in the publishing, but it's still possible for the publishers to open up the document, look through everything and read everything as it is. I can change these panels, make it a bit bigger. I can kind of fit it to my needs to be able to see that information and do my compilation work. We also have this detailed view because there's, like I said, a lot of metadata has to be captured. So from an EXTEDO perspective, when we are publishing and we're exporting, we have to ensure the submission is valid and all that metadata is either entered in the body of eSub Manager or it's coming in upon import if we're working with our other software products within the EXTEDO Pulse suite. So I'm assuming everything is okay. I want to come up here. This tab is everybody's go-to tab because this is really checking and verifying everything that has been done. So if I just maybe close this, everything that has been done is okay. So if I come over here and I check the application is okay, fingers crossed it is. In this case, everything is fine. So as a user, I can always or continuously check if there's any errors while I'm doing the publishing. It will give me an overview. If there's any success or anything that I have to be worried about, I look at that. Normally, I'm just checking that everything is in green because when that's done, I'm ready to kind of export this submission to the regulator. Now, before I export to the regulator, everything is okay. But what I am also able to do, if I just come back into this view, I can even rename the document. So you can see all of the other documents have been named quite nicely. This is just coming in as a tacrolimus SMPC. That's okay, I'm a publisher, so Kenneth might not be aware of it. We can, of course, bring this information over, but if I wanted to, I can just add a little bit more information, rename the file name, and that rename will take place. Considering everything is okay from a validation perspective, I can also lock this application so that nobody else is looking at it. So from a publishing, just to summarize, there's a lot of attributes to be collected. It can either be done within the user interface or it can come from other systems, but it's really helpful to be able to structure this data, and keywords are very important to be able to build up that hierarchy. The submission unit is the body. So here we can see all of the documents plus its respective sections and keywords that need to be entered. If you are a publisher, it's important to note that some keywords are mandatory depending on the region and some are optional. But it's really important to have a good data quality, data governance of managing keywords, because all of this information is, of course, going to the regulator and the way that they are going to assess. So this is kind of finished, it's exported, and now I am looking at this from a regulator point of view. So remember in the slide deck, the applicant work is done. Docuvera has exported the document. It's coming to eSub Manager. We've validated, everything is okay. We've locked it. We've exported the information. Now, I might not have made this clear in the beginning, but I will just emphasize this. In this case, we're working with EMA, so this application is going to EMA. We at EXTEDO, part of the Comio Group, are also very, very lucky to be able to have EMA using our viewing solution for viewing the eCTD4 applications. So what we have been doing with the EMA, and I'm just going to switch over because this is the applicant view. If we now look at this, and just let me log in. If we now look at this as I am an assessor at the EMA, I need to have a viewer to be able to do my review and assessment. They're using the same viewer that the life science industry is using, so that's really, really helpful. And for the assessor, they will either start at the start page and then go into their application. So you can see the tacrolimus 0.5 prolonged release hard capsule is already here, the submission unit number 1. But one of the beauties is that even within the viewer, they don't need to have something separate for looking at eCTD4. They can have the same solution that looks at eCTD4, eCTD3 across the globe. This viewer is also available for our life science customers, but I'm just showing you how it looks like from a regulator point of view. So we're kind of fast forwarding. I received this new application and I know I need to take a look at it. How am I normally working? Well, I will open up this application, and this is not the structure that you see on the export. That's why it's really important that a viewer is there. Again, data is coming in, but from a context point of view, it's still a human that needs to process and look at it. So this viewing is really important. What I showed you was all of that metadata that we had entered. So here we've got the application data, submission data, manufactured product, contact data, and a bit of information on what implementation guide was used. If anybody thinks, oh, why do I need to enter all of this information? Well, it's really being looked at from the regulator side. They need to marry up what the application is, all of this data coming in. And there's also processes on the regulator side that need to be considered as well. So all of this information is really being ingested either by a human or even by the processes from a digital side that this information is being reviewed. If I just open up the structure, just to kind of show you, you still have your traditional module 2 folder, module 1, 3, 4, and 5. That is already there. But what's normally happening, at least for today, is that the assessor is opening up the labeling document. So again, that same viewer that you saw in the publishing is available within the viewing. I'm just going to make this screen a little bit bigger. I'm going to fit the information in. And what's happening is, as an assessor, they're having to read all of this information to try to understand what is the medicine they are assessing. Although in here they can search for information, so in this case, maybe I want to search for special pop. So Kenneth, I know you're working on special population. So if I want to search for that information, I can do, and it will take me to the document, which is great. But if I quantify this, it could take an assessor, when receiving an initial application, it could take them a few hours to really understand what this product is about. And this is where we are also digitalizing the way that assessors work, because within our solution, we have this so-called generative AI chatbot. And I've already added something in. I'm just going to clear it, just so you know that I'm not faking it. Here, I can ask a question about the application that has come in. And what the beauty is that the assessment teams or even the life science industry are working in a known user interface, and the generative AI reviewing assistant is only focusing on the specific application that I need it to be focused on. So if I ask, for example, what is the special population information for now I can't spell tacrolimus 0.5 mg. What's happening is the ESA manager in this case is connected to the large language models. So we've worked with AWS specifically on this case. It's connecting to that information, and instead of the assessor spending time reading the information, it's summarizing that data for them. Now, okay, you might say, fine, it summarizes. We can do that on other solutions as well. But the beauty here is because the ESA manager is holding the knowledge base of the medicine, it's only summarizing based on the data that it already has. And also what's possible is it gives me the exact application plus the submission unit this information has come from. So then I can open up this document, and if I open up this document, then I'm back into my SMPC, and I can then go in and take a look at it, and I can kind of add annotations. Now, if I just come to the annotations, Kenneth started off with a change control. So what normally is happening here is I am in my specific area. I can right-click anywhere on the document. I can either highlight the text or I can add a sticky note. In this specific case, I'm going to add a sticky note, and I'm going to say, please be aware of the clinical medicine regime. And what we can do, as soon as we hit send, this information can potentially also go back into Docuvera so that it connects back into the change control. So not only are we able to save the assessors time, leverage their skill set to be able to work with the documents and speed them up on understanding of what medicine they are assessing, this information is coming together to build up an assessment report that can also go back into the respective Docuvera system to be able to create the change control and send more information over. So all in all, just to summarize, we have the publishing system, which is able to compile, which is able to leverage metadata from international standards. We're able to validate and lock and export to the regulator, but we're also able to view this information in a way that's going to be user-friendly. We're also able to significantly reduce the amount of time from hours to seconds of trying to increase that knowledge base for the assessors while utilizing the functionality of the viewing solution, and then being able to actively collaborate in real time and share this information back to the applicants. Maybe just to finish off, as we kind of see more and more a move away from documents and more using component authoring, it's really great because even these changes, they can be on the specific component and work on that. So not everything has to be changed when submitted. It can really work on a component level. So that is it from my side. We really hope you found this helpful. I guess I will hand it back to Julia. Is that right? I can stop sharing.
Yes, you can always hand back to me, Anjana, if needed. I'm always here for you. Thank you so much for this very interesting session, Anjana. And of course, Kenneth, are you still with us? Or are you already lost in the worlds of AI. No, you're not. Great. Thank you so much. Very impressive demos. I hope our participants like to see the solutions as much as I do, because I really love them when they are in action. And I actually also have received some questions for you guys. Maybe let's start with Anjana first. Oh, this is a nice one. How will ESUP retrieve the keywords from the V3 sequences in eCTD Manager?
Okay, so I'm going to break this down, and I promise I don't go into so much detail. This is the possibility of using forward compatibility, which is basically lifecycle of 3.2 and 4.0. So at least within our submission suite for eSub Manager, eCTD Manager, there is a way of transforming that metadata. And I like to put it of, if we're moving homes, I need to make sure that the correct 3.2 metadata has the right room when it moves into the eCTD4 house. So it is possible. We're going to call it digital magic, but it is possible as long as the applicant is maintaining keywords and has good data quality and governance.
Thank you very much. Speaking of eCTD V4, Kenneth, I have a question for you. Is Docuvera configured exclusively for eCTD 4.0, or can it be used with the current specification as well?
So Docuvera is, at its core, a very modular structured component authoring tool, and we are able to transform and export into a wide variety of formats and specifications. So the same Annex 1 that is used for the eCTD 4.0, that is a very specific configuration to take and transform that. There is some underlying content and metadata requirements for each, but we are also able to do EPI type 1 fire and everything else from the same project, as well as a Word download. We also have use cases where the same content and components are being exported as HTML for utilization in downstream websites. So it's extremely flexible, and it hosts and governs the content at its core in a very modular way that is almost agnostic towards ultimate format.
Great, thank you. Nice to hear. So if you have any other questions, please put them in the chat. If we do not manage to answer them now, we are happy to answer them via email. And of course, you can always contact us and send us an email if you have any question. But I still have some stuff for you, Anjana and Kenneth. So Anjana, in eCTD V4, does the envelope disappear and is replaced by the attributes of application and sequence?
In short, yes. So there's no envelope data per se, and that's why the metadata that's coming in is still, at least in our viewing solution, put into the grouping that would make sense for the applicants or the assessors to look at. So yeah.
Great, thank you. Kenneth, I feel a bit like in Wimbledon here. Kenneth, another Docuvera question. Can the CCMS be hosted on customer Azure space or only at the vendor site?
So we do currently tenant and architect within our own AWS environment. It is fully spec'd and architected with compliance around the globe in mind. We can explore custom deployments and configurations, but we have found in all of our conversations that that checks all of the boxes with various IT teams and regulations around the globe.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. And Anjana, we do have a hot topic here. If we switch from eCTD 3.2 to 4.0, do we need a baseline submission first?
No, So that's a good question, actually. I didn't want to do the masterclass, but I might end up doing another one. So no, there is a concept called forward compatibility. Nobody on a global level has tested that. EMA will be the first to pilot that next year. And that would mean that there can be a continuation of life cycle from 3.2 into 4.0, and the life science company does not have to submit a baseline. There's still a little bit of work to be done, but there's no need for a baseline. So forward compatibility facilitates for the continuation of the life cycle. And in a more practical guidance, that could mean you have an application that started its eCTD sequences in 3.2. Once all the activities are closed up, you can decide, for example, that a labeling change or a quality variation is going to start in 4.0. So no baseline needed, but happy to discuss that in more detail.
Thank you so much. More detail is also requested from Kenneth. So now let's go to component level, Kenneth. How do component level change requests map to submission plans or higher level change objects within a RIM system?
So we have several styles of integration. The most popular is a two-way, where a single call to action, we are planning an overall submission and this is the scope, is then done with a one-to-many mapping to Docuvera to identify the different key changes and impacted projects. Once the initial source information is identified in Docuvera, the starting project, the reuse engine actually assists the users in propagating and identifying down if this component on the CDS is updated, we need this updated in Annex 1, this updated in Annex 3B, this updated in 24 languages, this updated in a downstream document even further for local markets. It helps and it ties all of that down, and then it reports and pushes the information back up so that as you go through and mark it as complete, your high-level submission plan can have a very easy to read report of how far has that change propagated, where is it complete, and also if any deviations are being requested that need approval.
Thank you so much. And please tell me, what is the difference between authoring a full document and authoring individual components or sections?
Right, so in Docuvera, we do break the data down into a much more granular level. And we find the content strategy maps very well, not just with the ultimate intended use of that content, but also the individual teams that are responsible authoring, reviewing, and managing that content. So in the example we did today, the Annex 1 was treated in isolation. It can be bundled and assembled within Docuvera for the entire EU centralized procedure, for example, but it can also be managed as a very distinct document and provided for like the eCTD 4.0 assembly. In this way, you are accessing just the content that you need. You can maintain least access with your individual users and authors, and you have a very clear audit trail of what's going on and why did this content change at the end of the day.
Thank you very much. Looking at the time, Anjana, can we do a really quick eCTD v4 question?
Yeah, of course.
Quick as hyperlinking. The question is, how does hyperlinking work in eCTD v4?
It works the same as it does today, so there's nothing different. So the way that you're using hyperlinks today would be how you would use it for eCTD4. Again, I would say that please take that with a pinch of salt, because from the assessment side, not only are they using hyperlinks to navigate, they're using those keywords, they're using that metadata, and of course, if we're going into like generative AI, if you had a hyperlinking, as an assessor, I would have to search for it. So if we're looking at using the reviewing assistant, I can just ask the question and that information comes in. So today it works as it does for the current standards and the current publishing, but in the future, we also have to see how the users are going to be using that, and then that will change the way that the applicants are applying hyperlinks. That's wishful thinking from my side, but yeah, this is what I would foresee happening in the next few years.
Yeah, we have a lot to look forward to in the next few years. I think we already had a glimpse into the future today. And yeah, I think we're going to wrap up for now. I thank everyone for being here and discussing and asking questions to our speakers, Anjana Pindoria-Rettenberger and Kenneth Gutierrez. Thank you so much for being with us here and answering our question and showing us the great demos and the great solutions you brought with us. I wish everyone a nice evening and I'm looking forward to seeing you again. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Thank
Bye.
you so much. Bye.